Welcome to Points in the Podcast. I'm Elias Schuster. I am joined here, as always, by Matt Rooney. And Matt, this is an exciting day. Not only are we less than a week out now from NBA action, but this is our first show where we're gonna just dive into what we know best. We're gonna, like I said, give the people what they want, and it's time to just start talking some Chicago Bulls. So each week, we're going to give some NBA news, start the show on the top, so make sure everyone's caught up with some of the biggest NBA storylines, because it's important no matter what team you're a fan of, right? I think it's important to know what's going on. And then after that, it's gonna be a lot of Bulls talk. And I think that's
It's what we know. It's what we know. You know everything about everything there is to know about the NBA. It's what I know. I have some very general knowledge on the NBA, but I think I can chip in with a little bit more Bulls knowledge. As we're keeping an eye on. You're keeping a very close eye on every one of those games, and I'm keeping a fairly close eye on most of them as well.
Right. Well, and I think that's what this was all about. We wanted to find a balance. I was at first excited to just mainly talk a lot of different NBA stuff because, like, I write about the Bulls every single day, and they're shoved down my throat. But that's because I'm a masochist and I enjoy the endless
Pain.
I enjoy the pain that the Chicago Bulls caused me. So it was only a matter of time before finally I was like, you know what? I guess the podcast too. We're just gonna start talking. We're just gonna start talking Bulls. So that's what we're going to do. The format of these shows as the season gets up and running here, what you can expect is probably we're going to start each show just with same thing as we've done throughout past shows if you've listened during the offseason, which is our weekly bullet points. That's just a way to get you caught up on NBA news around the league, anything you may have missed, which as a Bulls fan, as somebody who follows Chicago sports, still going to be important for you to know some of those big storylines. And we'll always connect them back to maybe how they, tie into what the Bulls are doing. And then after that, it's going to be Bulls talk. Of course, right now, that means talking about the preseason. They got 4 preseason games out of the way. They got one more happening tomorrow night against the Minnesota Timberwolves before the opening night tip-off. I always use tip-off instead of kickoff.
Can I say something?
Yeah, of course.
Can I say something? I try and do that too if I'm writing a basketball article.
Yeah.
I try and use tip-off, hockey face-off, football kickoff.
Exactly, yeah.
The NBA preseason lasts too long. I don't need this much. You can condense the games a little bit more for me. Let's just get through it. I feel like we've been talking about the NBA this is our third straight podcast where we've been in the NBA preseason. You got to ramp things up.
Well, they did add a game, I think. Yeah,
once you get me started with the preseason, let's just go. Let's get going. I want to tip off the regular season. I'm ready for Bulls basketball.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think it's 5 games is a lot, and especially when the stars aren't going to be playing. For most teams, stars aren't playing the majority of those. And it's important to get your conditioning caught up to speed, get it caught up to game speed. But we've also talked about it on the show already. None of these teams are playing up to game speed, and it's still going to be a rude awakening when the actual season begins and the games start to matter. So I can agree with that. I think I think it's a little too long. And I think there needs to be a rule because it was the second Bulls preseason game where it went to double overtime. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, why am I sitting here watching this? Why am I sitting here watching?
Can we just call ties in the preseason? If you play one overtime and if it's still tied, it's fine. Whatever.
Or just next basket.
Next basket wins. Fine. Yeah,
just don't stop the clock. Give me a next basket wins. I don't need to see Quentin Jackson and Onurala Patim out there carrying
good pronunciation. I've tried to pronounce that 15 different times, and I still couldn't now that I've heard you say it.
I don't know if it's correct, but I'm hoping that it is.
You see, it's one of those things. It's like Worcestershire sauce. You say it fast enough, people just think you know what you're talking about, even though you don't actually pronounce it right. Just say it fast enough with enough confidence, and boom, you got it right.
Yeah, it's all about confidence. Okay, so, but I agree. I mean, in general, preseason, right? It seems like it's been a little long. Especially when most of these games just end up being the second half of. It's a scrub fest. So, maybe let's play just a one half each game. I don't know. Let's think of something some sort of crazy difference to make because it doesn't seem necessary. Okay. So another thing that doesn't seem necessary to go right into our weekly bullet points here. This is so to kick things off, tip things off. I want to start with there's not many storylines here this week for us to really get into before we talk some Chicago Bulls. But one thing I did want to touch on that actually came out this morning. We're recording on Wednesday, October 18th. Adam Silver appeared on ESPN. He talked to Stephen A. Smith on First Take and, divulged that the NBA, which I think this has kind of been leaked previously, but they're considering different formats for this upcoming 2023-24 All-Star game in Indianapolis. And more specifically, he specified that They think they're going to go back to their roots, which kind of means, or which he later went on to more directly say, East versus West, right? Like that's where it all began. That's what everyone was traditionally used to before, however many years ago it was switched to the draft format. And Matt, I'm curious to hear your thoughts because this is mine briefly in short. I just think that no matter what they do nowadays, it's not going to change the fact that the All-Star game stinks. Nobody cares. And it's not going to go back to the era of the 90s when you had guys like Jordan, or even early 2000s when you guys had guys like Kobe who just went out there and made it, made everyone go because of how hard they were playing. You're just not going to see that. I don't think we're going back to that time.
Yeah, like it's fine, I guess. Like we were joking before the podcast when I saw this in the notes. It's like it's the 15th different time in the last 30 years that a professional league is changing their all-star game. But I think that's just kind of what leagues are going to keep doing, because year one of this, East versus West, some of people our age will tune back in. Oh, nostalgia, East versus West is back. Then after a year or two, we're going to get bored of it, and then they're going to try something new to get people back in. Like that's just kind of what all-star games are going to be now, because like you said, they used to be, I don't want to call them competitive, but like semi-competitive at times. But now that we're at the point, we're at the point of load management. We're at the point of, players don't play in the preseason a lot. Nobody really wants to play an all-star game. Nobody really cares that much about an all-star game. They care about the nod. They care about being there for the weekend. But for the most part, the actual game itself, there's really not much you can do to make it important or matter. Baseball tried making it for home field advantage in the World Series, and that got to a point where it was getting kind of ridiculous. But an all-star game was that way. But at least that was competitive. But no league I think is ever really going to go back to that. So I don't know. Sure, fine, it's cool. I'll probably tune in for a couple minutes to see if Zach LaVine gets in the game, and then I'll probably just turn it right back off. But I don't know. It is what it is. It's fine. It doesn't really make that big of a difference
I just
to
think
me.
I think the thing that I mean, I guess frustrates me isn't the right word, but we've seen them change it, or consider change a lot over the past decade or whatever it's been. And, I like the draft when they announced it. I was fine with that. I think that was a way to spice it up. It was a little exciting. It at least was fun to watch the kind of TNT draft that they would do. And each captain would pick their guys. And it's funny to get to try to perceive that and whatever.
Oh boy. Eli appears to be gone here. Now he's going to keep loading up. Give us a few seconds and we're going to work on this. And we're back.
And we're back. I don't know what happened there. I think
I threw up the big technical difficulty sign, which is just our podcast logo, to try to figure out what happened. I think we had an internet issue, but Eli, let's hop right back into it, talking All-Star game.
Yeah, Adam Silver was listening in, and he didn't like that we were.
He didn't like it. He pulled the plug on us. That means we're making waves, though.
Look at us gaining traction. No, long story short, I just think that there's not a lot that you can do to make this more competitive. I think that the draft idea was a fun one while it lasted. I enjoyed the kind of stupid little storylines that would come out of players picking the guys that they wanted. And but I think he was right in the comments that he made earlier today, specifying that it's gotten away a little bit from the game itself. But even if you try to go back to this East versus West, which I think inherently should generate a little more level of, or a little more feeling of competitiveness, just because I'm sure there's guys in the East that want to prove that, that they're better than the West, and maybe that's a better or generates better team camaraderie. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, this all goes back to player empowerment era, player movement era. There isn't these attachments to the East. You don't see these guys staying in one conference for their whole careers nearly as much anymore. And there's just not that overall level of tension, I guess you could say, between the two sides. So I get wanting to experiment with it because it continues to not do very well. But I think they just need to accept the fact that, like, hey, it's
It's
just
never going to do
it's
very
not
well.
going to do well.
It's All-Star week. Like it's meant to be a week off, and pretty much anything you get from that is going to be bonus. And quite honestly, all the money and stuff the league is going to make is from All-Star week, not exactly the game. And like
Right.
that's okay. The ratings aren't going to be very good on TNT. That's just going to happen.
Yeah,
But
you're still
like
gonna have people that go. It's still gonna be a fun
you're gonna,
little
yeah, like
event for families.
All-Star. I know it was right before COVID, the one that was in Chicago. Like I feel like that was
It was
just a
excellent.
week-long event. Like it was so well done. Like there was stuff every night. There were people here. There was the celebrity game. There was dunk, all this, and like everything was an event. You were selling out the United Center every night, and there was a who's who of who was going to show up and all that. Like that's okay. Like that's where you need to live, and you're not going to have great TV ratings that night. That's
Yeah,
okay. We can
it's
live with
okay.
that.
Yeah.
It's one Saturday or Sunday night or whatever the hell it was that it takes place on. I
Yep,
do
I agree.
remember though the fourth quarter of that game. I think that was the first year they did like the each quarter is its own
Yeah,
game or
the Elam
something, and then
ending
the
was
Elam
yeah.
ending. Like that was actually the first time I've ever watched an All-Star game. Or I shouldn't say first time ever. First time since I was like a little kid when I knew everybody. But I watched an All-Star game and was like actually intrigued by it because I think I remember Joel Embiid just kind of like took the game over and tried to make a comeback and was like the best player on the floor for about half a quarter. It
Yeah,
was
well,
really fun to
I think
watch.
that I think that All-Star game is, and I'm glad it was in Chicago. It's going to go down as one of the better ones, or one of the last good ones potentially, just
Didn't it
because
end on a free throw though? That shouldn't be able to
I think
happen.
that is how it
That
ended.
can't
Yeah,
happen.
yeah, but it was the first year with that Elam ending, so it was fun, it was
Yeah.
different, and the players got into it. They liked the fixed score idea, and if you don't know what the Elam ending is, that's what it is. You kind of you basically for to keep it brief, you just end up creating a fixed score at the end of the game that's determined by how many points were scored um, in the previous quarters. And so one team is usually, whatever team is up, the other team is down that many points, and they need to either, then you add a certain total and you need to reach a certain number.
Yeah.
And the team that's winning is obviously closer to that number, and then the team that's lower needs to work harder to get to that number. So whatever, it was a good idea. I like the idea in general. I don't think like the NBA should. Some people are like the NBA should do this for all games. I don't
No.
necessarily think that's the case,
No.
but I like what it added to that All-Star game. But then it got stale, right? Like immediately, just like the draft thing. Like it
Yeah,
happens.
it's like
It's
oh okay, it is what it is
fun
now.
for
It's not
1
that fun.
year. They care for 1 year, and then they're like, okay, it's back to this is
Yeah.
wait, I forgot this is the All-Star break, and I'm supposed to not be doing anything. So yeah, it is what it is. I like the they're gonna keep trying. It's not gonna work. The second little storyline here before we get into some Chicago Bulls preseason talk. Just the James Harden saga, right? Every single show we got to mention his name, and it stings coming out of my mouth because I want this to be over. But the James Harden situation, he was with the team during preseason. He went to Colorado, which is where they were having their training camp. He did show up. He did participate in practice with the team. He has not been with the team playing in preseason, however. And that's just kind of where things stand. They say that he is, still likely to start the season with the Philadelphia 76ers. There's been no traction on a trade still. Adrian Wojnarowski reported on Wednesday morning that they're still far apart in any sort of negotiations. It will likely remain that way. And I think that's just, that's about it. But he's not attending these 76ers preseason games. So, take that as you will. But it looks like no trade is going to get done before the season starts. So then that's the big question next week. Is he on the court playing with them, or is he going to start losing money because he decides, to sit out until a trade gets figured out? That will
I'm gonna
be.
bet he's on the court with him, like because he's not gonna want to lose money, and it's a lot of money to lose. So he'll probably just go kind of half-ass his way through some basketball games until he gets traded, so he can get a paycheck. But like, it's like you said it before we started this topic. It's just like it's exhausting.
Yeah.
We already know what the end result is likely
Well, it's
going
exhausting
to be.
too because nobody wants the
But
guy. Like nobody wants.
yeah,
It's different than like a little bit different than Dame, which I also got exhausted by the Damian Lillard shenanigans. But just because of the drama around Miami and Dame saying he's like, well, I'm not. He would be doing. There would be that video of like "Welcome to Miami" playing in the background and all this stuff, and then just like all these
mhm.
little stupid moments throughout that process. And so I got annoyed by it, but it was still like, well, I think there's people who want Dame.
It's like
And
it's when this goes down, this could be a move that shifts the landscape of the NBA and creates a contender, or in
right. And
terms
it's,
of the
yeah,
Heat, like,
and
or
that's not
drops
happening with Harden.
drops a team from a potential 1 seed to a potential 8 seed. That's what happened with Lillard. With Harden, that's not happening. When he gets traded to the Clippers, inevitably it's going to take them from a potential 6 seed to a potential 5 seed, four
Right.
seed, and
Yeah.
that's about that. Like, it's not, the Clippers aren't winning an NBA title because they go get James Harden. Like, that's just
Yeah, I would agree.
that's
I mean, I think that he is just
I want to say fat, but close to it.
yeah, the player that the difference that he can make for a team right now, unless he, reverts back to old Harden or really changes his ways, it just doesn't feel like it's going to be as significant as, yes, a player like Dame could still make it this time if he ends up in the right situation. So, and also just you can never trust that Harden's actually going to be on the court. Dame, on the other hand, while he's had his injury troubles, has been like the epitome of, reliable. You kind of know what you're going to get from Dame always.
Yeah.
Okay, that's your little news. Not much going on. We're just ready for preseason to be over, and then we'll have a little bit more news once the season gets off next week, which 6 days away from recording this
Almost time.
will be opening night, which is exciting. Okay, Chicago Bulls talk. Matt, this is exciting. This is our first go at just some straight up Bulls talk. There's a lot that I could get into here, but I think we are going to come to you again early next week before the season starts, so there'll be time.
What day is the opener again?
The opener is.
Why am I blanking?
The opener is going to be on Thursday, so it would be October 25th against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Oh, my bad, that's a Wednesday. So October 25th next week on Wednesday. So yeah, a week from today will be the Chicago Bulls home opener against the Oklahoma City Thunder. It will be at the United Center. And yeah, and I think, next week we're going to talk more about that matchup, just kind of the keys to victory, if you will, for what the Chicago Bulls need to do, because it's not going to be an easy one by any means. And we'll get a little more into some preseason stuff that we've seen as well. But I think we have a big sample size here, right? We have 4 games from the Bulls, and I think the way I would describe these first 4 preseason games is, and I talked about this in my morning bullets over at Bleacher Nation, is it feels like I've eaten too much, is how I've interpreted these 4 games. It's like the first game I was scarfing down like this new look offense. I was enjoying it. I was encouraged by it. Second game, a little bit of that as well. Like, you're full, but you just kind of keep going because it tastes good. You're into it. And then start to feel, the third game, there was no stars playing. It was Kobe White, Patrick Williams. You're just relaxing, sitting on the couch, getting a little sleepy. You're just like, okay, it's fine. And then this fourth game for me, while there were some good, and we'll get into it, I thought there was also some queasiness in my stomach, a little bit of because this was the game where the starters played the most minutes yet this preseason. We saw Zach LaVine played 31 minutes. DeMar DeRozan, I believe they all played well
29 minutes. He played 29. Vooch played 28. Kobe 25. Williams 21.
Yeah, so starters, White and Williams were less just because of likely the game, the times that they played in the previous game. Yeah. But the starters were out there the longest that we've seen them thus far. Most of them played into the fourth quarter. And it wasn't that it went poorly, I would say, but in terms of this offense that they're trying to implement, which is founded on an up-tempo style in general, playing more in transition, getting out ahead of the defense, but also just off-ball movement and quicker decision-making. That's what we saw a lot of in that first game against Milwaukee, which was so encouraging. And I think we saw a little bit less of it in this game in terms of just shooting more three-pointers, getting to the free throw line, like doing the things that they have preached all training camp. This was a game where we saw them definitely getting into the paint, attacking the paint a lot, but I didn't see them taking advantage of the opportunities that's supposed to create, which is, again, open kick out or kicking out to the 3-point line and getting to the free throw line more, like all these areas that they've specified. I didn't see that happening as much in this game, and I felt like it was starting to lean a little bit more towards what we've been used to with. They shot the fewest 3-point attempts in this game out of any preseason game, despite the starters playing the most minutes that they've played. That was the problem last year, right?
This one was like it was like that was a good way of putting it. It was like you're getting kind of encouraged, but still not totally sure what to believe because it's the preseason, and then like Oh wait, no, that looked a whole lot like last year. Like, like that kind of raised the red flag a little bit. But like, it's not going to happen immediately for them.
Yeah.
And I guess like games like this in the preseason are going to happen. Then this is something like, not to sound too cliche, but we watch the tape, we improve on it, we get better, we don't make the same mistakes next time. So I would imagine that there's one more preseason game we said, correct?
Yes, on Friday against
It's
Minnesota.
probably not that. It's probably not a game that you're going to see Levine, Demar, Vooch play 30 minutes in again, but one you probably see him play the first quarter, maybe a little bit plus. Let's improve on that in the first quarter. The time we're in, let's get a little bit more. Let's take a few more threes. Let's, like you said, use this offense to the advantage, get to the free throw line a little bit more. But last night, yeah, was a step back. But I still think there's time for improvement, and also these games are going to happen because it's not just going to click right
Yeah.
away. Like
Well, I
it's
think
not going
that's
to
what
be.
yeah.
It's not going to be a seamless transition.
And that's what I had to remind myself, like watching it is, like obviously, just like how in the second stint in the first preseason game, the starters' initial, when they first started the game, everything looked great. They were flying up and down the court. They were kicking out to 3-point shooters. They shot like 12 3-pointers in the first quarter or whatever it was. They were kind of checking all the boxes that they definitely talked about at media day and in press conferences during practices, and then that second stint in that first preseason game, they came out and it looked a little bit drier and a little more stagnant and more used to what we were seeing. So, and again, I want to say that it's not that this game against Toronto, I thought, looked completely like they played last season, because I do think that there has been a clear emphasis on getting into the paint and pushing the tempo in transition. I think that their head is in the right place. Like, I do think that they're trying to make this new offense work. I just think that something I fear with this group is not understanding that everything's connected with how this offense is supposed to be played. And by that, I mean, when you're attacking the paint as much as they are, and they were last night, you're not taking advantage of what that is supposed to create for you,
Yes,
which
it's
is those extra 3-point shots. We saw numerous guys. We saw Javon Carter do it. Patrick Williams did it a little bit, even though he ended up 2 of 4 from 3-point range.
shoot
But we
more
saw,
threes, Patrick.
yeah, he
If you're
should.
listening.
We saw a couple more instances where guys just passed up open threes to drive into the paint. So there was, again, this conscious effort of, no, I get it. We're supposed to get into the paint, get into the paint, get into the paint. But it's like, well, no, one person's supposed to get in the paint. That's supposed to bleed itself into, all right, here's an open 3-point shot. You have to take it and not hesitate. Same thing with if you're getting to the, if you are attacking the paint, you got to be decisive and try to get to the free throw line. Because I think there was a lot of, I'm going into the paint with the intention to kick it out and pass, or I'm going into the paint with the intention to find somebody cutting, and not I'm going to go up strong. So there's a level of physicality and nuance to, I think, the offense that they're trying to play that just wasn't there last night. And it kind of taps into fears that I've always had about this group, which is just, they're kind of like one-sided, I guess. Like the one-dimensional thing is
a
always
little bit
been
of
a
blinders
concern.
on.
Yeah, they like when they play a certain way, then they like commit to playing that way, but then it doesn't, I don't know the right terminology, but it doesn't necessarily branch out into the other ways that it should. Like last year, it became just kind of like in the big game's biggest moments, the ISO ball stuff, and more of a half court slow, your turn, my turn. And once they get into that mindset, it's hard to get them out of it. So I don't want them to get into this mindset of, yeah, we're getting into the paint, but then you're not, reaping the benefits of what that is supposed to
Well,
cause
it's understanding the whys, and not to oh god, I just sound like Matt Nagy. It's understanding like what you're doing, like the actual concepts behind the offense, and we've seen flashes of it in the preseason. Like you said, the first game of the preseason, we both thought looked really good for a while, and then I know they ended up losing that game. But the first half, like they played some pretty good basketball. The offense was clicking, everything seemed to be working. It's just going to take a little bit of time, like especially with this group. It's not like Billy Donovan has this brand new ball of clay. He gets to mold into whatever he wants. He has I don't know, like he's got one thing that the clay's already molded into, and he's got to get it back into the ball, and then he's got to remold it into what he wants. And it's just going to
Well, we
take a little
talked
bit of
about
time.
this, right? It's teaching an old dog new
It
trick.
is teaching an old dog new tricks, and it's
Can
gonna
you is
take.
always the question. And I
I
think
guess
you
we'll
can,
find
but yeah,
out.
it
Like
takes time.
and I do think that. I mean, luckily we saw at the end of last year, Kobe White really kind of take that next step that we've been hoping he'd take for a while. Is like not just this change of pace point guard coming off the bench who could push the pace and sometimes get hot and hit some threes. Like he's a guy who actually can push the pace for this offense and seemingly knows where to get the ball when it needs to get there. I think having him run the paint and having him kind of be this, I don't want to, he's not quite an old dog. Like he's kind of used to this is kind of the pace he's been running for quite some time. And I think having him run the offense, even though I was a little bit skeptical of it because I liked him in a second unit spot, I think he's going to help move this offense kind of get to where it needs to go, especially with the pace that he plays at all the time. I don't really know where I was going with that because I lost my train of thought in talking about how impressed I've been with Kobe White so far this year.
No, I think
this preseason, but like I think that's going to help them going forward. And like it's going to take some time. It's going to take some patience, and there's going to be some games in the first month where we're like, oh man, that's it. And there's going to be some games in the first month where we're going to be like, oh man, that ain't it. Like it's going to take a little bit of time, but you're hoping that by, start of the in-season tournament, not that that's something I super care about, but they are regular seasons, just like as a milestone, like by the time you get a month into the season, you're hoping you see, 7 out of 10 times you're seeing this offense run the way it's supposed to be run. And then every once in a while, you're going to have some lapses of judgment. You're going to have Zach LaVine or DeMar trying to play ISO ball, and that's going to happen here and there. But I think more often than not, we're going to start to see this offense take the steps we want it to.
I hope so. I like the optimism.
Maybe that's me being the optimistic.
I like, and we need it. We need some optimism here. And it's not that I'm not trying to promote that necessarily, but I just,
I'm pessimistic about like every team I'm a fan of, but for some reason with the Bulls, I find myself.
You always find yourself getting dragged back in. Like it could work. And I think I want to talk about Kobe White here in a second, just because he definitely has been the standout of the preseason.
Yep.
In a lot of ways for Chicago. And honestly, if we watching a lot of around the league as well, I think that's a player that probably should get a little more attention for the preseason performance he's had, but it's also preseason, so I get it. But I think before I do that, like we talk about just some of the concerns, at least the feeling, I guess it's hard to even say concern because it's like a feeling it gave me last night watching. I think that when we talk about the bad or some of the concerns from the preseason, it is just this idea of, they talk about the free throw, getting to the free throw line more. Haven't really seen it. They talked about shooting more 3-point shots since the first game. It was a lot better, and every game since that, it has only shrunk. The numbers have only shrunk. And like we said, starters played the most that they've played thus far, and the 3-point shooting looked a lot like it did last season. Mm-hmm. And so I think those are the boxes that have been made very clear by the organization, by the front, coaching staff. That's what we want to see. And so I think not having seen that, and then more specifically seeing someone like Patrick Williams, right? I think he's another guy that I want to touch on a little bit, and I'll throw it in here just because I think we're talking a little bit more about the bad or the less good right now. And it's not that Patrick Williams. Yeah, it's not that Patrick Williams has played poorly. I want to make that clear. But I do think that queasiness again started to set in a little bit while watching not only last night mostly, but even 2 games ago, which everyone was excited about. I wrote about it over at Bleacher Nation, but I made a point in that post to specify what was good and what was less good actually about that performance, because he dropped 20 points. With the starters out, he was extremely aggressive. It definitely was, the most aggressive we've seen him this preseason. Offensively, he was attacking guys off the dribble. He was doing it all too. It wasn't just trying to find and hunt his jump shot, which he has a good mid-range jumper. So it wasn't just trying to get to his mid-range spots. He did a little bit of, he did good stuff as a cutter. He did good stuff attacking the rim. And, I think some of that came because of the confidence he had early in the game by just pulling up for a 3 and hunting those spots on the floor. But but what worried me was, it was just the scoring. We still didn't see any of the rebounding. We still didn't see, a lot of other stuff from him. And then we go into last night's game. Billy Donovan ends up pulling him out of the starting lineup after about 2.5, 3 minutes, and to run him with the second unit, which seems to be the plan, stagger him with the second unit, but not that early. And Billy Donovan said after the game, the reason he did that was because he didn't like what he was seeing from Patrick Williams in terms of his aggression and his physicality. And so I think, and a lot of that goes to the rebounding. He's not actively rebounding. I had the number in front of me, but because of when I was booted off this podcast, some stuff also just disappeared from me, I guess. But I had the numbers in front of me, and his rebounding this preseason has not been any better than we saw last season.
He only
He's
had
not
3
being,
rebounds last night in 21 minutes, which for a guy
and that
like
was
him,
good compared to the
yeah.
other games because
I just
he's been getting nothing. So I think that's another concerning for me is not only is he pulled in a preseason game right after he had a great game where he should come out confident, he should come out aggressive. He has to get pulled early on because he's not showing that. And it's also just when you're in there next to the starters, you're supposed to be the one helping on the glass. You're supposed to be the one moving actively off the ball and bringing that physicality because of his frame that he has and because of his build and his athleticism. But he continues to struggle to do that in a lot of ways.
It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I get he seems like maybe a little bit of a passive personality kind of guy. He's a little bit of like he's a quieter guy. He's not the most outspoken person in the media or whatever, kind of keeps to himself. But like you see the aggression, at least offensively, when he's with the second unit and the confidence when he's kind of the guy on the floor. All right, I get it. If you're a little bit hesitant to pull up and take more shots when you're on the floor with Levine and Vooch and DeMar. Like, I don't like that, but I understand it. The one way we've talked about this, I think before, like the way you can contribute is going and pulling down boards, being an athlete, crashing the bucket when Zach's putting up a three, crashing when Vooch is putting something up. Like that's your role in that unit. And then you're going to get some open threes, you're going to get some looks, whatever. But like, go be a monster on the boards if you want to contribute. Like if you and you're not necessarily wanting to take all these shots, like this is a way that you can be aggressive, you can contribute, and you can be prove that you're a starter in the NBA. And just he just doesn't want to do it for some reason, and I'm not totally sure why or how the message isn't really getting through to him. Like, dude, you're up for a contract at the beginning or at the end of this year. Like,
right.
If you want to get paid, whether it's by the Bulls or somewhere else, like you got to start putting in the effort more on the glass, because guy who scores 11 and 3 isn't nearly as valuable as guy that scores 11 and grabs 8, 9, 10 boards a night.
Right. And he definitely has the body to be able to do that. Yeah.
He does. Like he's not some small, tiny little, like he's what, 6'9", 6, like he's a 6'7",
yeah,
so whatever. He's a big dude. He's a freak athlete. Like that's why they drafted him. They drafted him because he's a freak athlete.
Yeah, so looking at it right now, looking at the numbers, Patrick Williams rebounds in the preseason. He has played the third most minutes, yet he has the, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, eighth most rebounds, total rebounds on the team. Players that have more rebounds than him include Kobe White, Dalen Terry, Ayo Dosunmu,
Dalen Terry time, Dalen Terry minutes,
and Terry Taylor. So those are just some, but then it's Torrey Craig, Nikola Vucevic, Andre Drummond, which can make a little more sense. But you have Dalen Terry and Kobe White. Dalen Terry more rebounds, Kobe White tying him, and Zach LaVine tying Patrick Williams so far this preseason for total rebounds. And again, he has played the third most minutes, Patrick Williams. So look, I don't want to make this attacking him for one area of his game. Like I get it. It's he's done other good things. Like I said, there was encouraging moments that we've seen so far, and in that game 3. But at the same time, it's not the whole article I wrote at Bleacher Nation was, is this another flash or is this a sign of what's to come? We've seen him before take the keys when Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan are off the floor at the end of regular seasons. There was that big 35-point performance or whatever he had against Minnesota 2 years ago. Yeah. Like we've seen these little flashes that he has, and he understands like, okay, they're off the floor, so time for me to go hard. But he continues to struggle to fit next to them and have that mindset. And then I think that can bleed into his stints with the second unit, because then he goes, I think he's
for sure. I mean, it's hard to flip a switch in game. Like it's
right. And he showed last season that he's a little bit better. And this is why I think, and this is a conversation we can have next week, but this is why I think that there's potential there for just to move him to the second unit permanently and put Torrey Craig in with the starters, because Torrey Craig has played well and he fits really well and he does a lot of what Williams should be doing. So
I think that you'll see, especially with Billy's quick hook last night, like I think that might be the threat right now. Like, all right, like if you're not going, like I think, like you said, like we talked about it, like that's a little bit of a, like that is a threat. That's a signal. That's all right. If you're not going to do this, then you're just not going to start. You're not going to be an NBA starter. You're going to start, 20 games. It's just going to be Torrey's job. If you're not going to do what you can, like, if you're not going to contribute to this starting unit, what we need you to, you can go play in the second unit. You can be your confident offensive guy. You can be a second unit player. That's fine. You're not going to be in the starting lineup.
And I mean, that's what we ended up seeing him do, towards the second half of last season. Like Billy Donovan.
Maybe that's what's best for the team. Who knows? Maybe that is what's best for the team. It's
Right.
unfortunate if it is, because we've seen what his ceiling can be when he is at his best. But like, if he's only going to hit that with the second unit, then all right, you're going to be a second unit player.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what we've seen from Craig, which we can get to here in a second, is even more
Can't believe
reason
he's a
to have a
veteran
short
minimum
leash.
guy.
I know. Yeah, so that's kind of the bad, right? There's been some concerns, but talking about the good, a little bit more of the good. Kobe White is the biggest good that there's been. It's been so fun to watch him out there so far this preseason. I feel more confident than ever that this is kind of just who he is now, and that he's another guy that has shown flashes at times. Um, and, he's also had an interesting career because his role has changed a lot every single season. And now it's changing again this year because they're, looking at him to be the starting point guard. But I think through that, and this was always something I said with him, I actually think it's helped his game a lot to see that role change because he's, learned that he can't just be the score first guard that he was at UNC and then can't coming into the league. His rookie season, he was that. He just got to be a bucket getter. He had those fun games where he would just be knocking down like 7 threes in a quarter
Unconscious.
against the Knicks. Yeah, like he had these great performances rookie season that were a lot of fun, but it wasn't the type of player that was going to be promoting much winning basketball. And so I think by moving to the starting lineup, moving to the bench, moving more of an off-ball role versus an on-ball point guard role, like playing all these different roles that he's played throughout his 4 seasons in his career, I think are finally starting to add up into the player that we see now today on the court, which is just a smarter player. This is the most in control of the game I've seen him. It's the best decision making that I've seen from him, especially when it comes to just doing what the coaching staff wants, right? Which is what a point guard is supposed to do. There's a clear way this team wants to play, which we've already talked about ad nauseum on this podcast, is, get downhill, get into the paint, create from there. And White has done a lot of that, I think, so far in this preseason. If he has been the guy and he's been the primary ball handler and he's getting the offense to play in the style that they're supposed to be playing. So that's just, and that again speaks to this idea of just a more in control player, a higher IQ player, and someone who understands the game at a new level. So he shot 52. This was another thing that I like that I just wanted to point out in terms of the diversity they're getting from his play. It's not just, scoring or creating, and the way he's scoring isn't just attacking off the dribble. He's shot 52.4% of his made field goals have been unassisted. So what that means is, about 48 or whatever have been assisted field goals. And so what I like about that is you're getting these moments where he's creating for himself a little bit. He's helping the offense by being more aggressive and getting into the paint. But we've also seen some great off the dribble shots in the mid range and stuff created from him this season, or in this preseason. But also he's doing a lot of great off ball movement. We've seen him come off screens and do what he does as a catch and shoot threat, which is why it is intriguing to have him in that starting lineup because they need that 3-point shooting. So he's been active he's been active moving off the ball is what I should say. So he's splitting up the way he's impacting the game too as a scorer and not just being that like, I'm going to pull up, I'm going to try to get my shot. So everything that I've seen from him, Matt, I've liked a lot this preseason. I think there's real potential for that breakout year to be coming from him just in terms of a positive impact plus player. And he might not still be the most traditional point guard. He's not going to be, I don't think he's going to be racking up assists necessarily every single night. And his passing can always get better, but it comes down to the decision making, and he's definitely starting to look like one of the better ones on the team.
Yeah, like I've said most of my piece on Kobe earlier, but like it seems like he's just getting a lot more comfortable in what he's been asked to do. And I don't remember exactly when that switch flipped for him last year, but like last month and a half of the year last year is when that switch kind of flipped for him. And he's comfortable in what he's being asked to do. He knows that he's not trying to be somebody that he's not either. Like I said, he's not trying to turn into Chris Paul where he's an elite passer dropping 15 assists a night or whatever it is. Like, he's playing within himself. He's playing his role, and he's a guy who's not to go back to beating up on Patrick Williams, but like Kobe has forced his way into the starting lineup and has kept himself there, which is kind of like Williams has been the opposite. Like, he keeps getting chance after chance, and it appears he's more trending towards being a second unit player, where we talked about it and like both kind of said maybe Kobe in his best role is running that second unit so he can be like go-to scorer, but he's pushed the envelope enough.
Yeah, I think I was wrong.
Hand up, very much wrong on that. Like, he's pushed the envelope enough and been good enough in the role that he's been asked to play that he's has to be a starter. He's forced his way into the starting role, and this is his offense, and he's doing a heck of a job running it.
Yeah.
Granted, just preseason, we got to see it in the regular season too.
Right.
But
Yeah,
like,
it needs to continue because that's also been I would say arguably the biggest thing for him, and it goes back to maturing and
yeah,
just being more in control, like we say. But
have to see it
consistency,
consistently. But the
yeah,
fact that he's picked up where he left off, he finished at a consistent pace the end of last year, and the fact that he's picked up where he left off last year is encouraging.
yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I was just looking at it over the last like 25 games this season, averaged 12 points, a little over 4 assists per game, shooting almost 50% from the field. So there was just a lot of good last season, and like you said, it's been carrying over, which is definitely a positive. Another positive would be Torrey Craig. We mentioned him earlier. He was someone I was very high on when they initially signed him, especially when they signed him to a veteran deal. I wrote up just a little article sharing my thoughts about how I thought that would be a steal. I was shocked that they got him on a veteran minimum because he's only played for contenders basically throughout his career. He's been to the playoffs plenty of times. I'm going to look up right now his playoff games. He's got 75 career playoff games. So
Wow,
he's
did not
played
realize that.
Yeah, he's played. I believe he's played for Denver. He's played for Milwaukee. He's played for Phoenix. So he's been a
Oh, that'd do it. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's been a consistent guy, and these are all teams that he's been locked into the rotation. He's been a starter at times. He's come off the bench. Like he's just used to being a I'll do whatever you ask me to do type of player. And so I think why I like the signing at the time, and now we're seeing them it come to fruition right away in the preseason is my dog. See, in the preseason is that he is not only somebody who offensive rebounds consistently, which this team needs. They finished 28th in offensive rebounding percentage last season.
Not great.
Not great at all. This preseason so far, however, they've been one of the top offensive reboundings, if not, I believe, averaging the most offensive rebounds per game. And a big reason for that is what a guy like Torrey Craig brings to the table. But it's also his defensive versatility. They have not had many wings that are long, and especially against a team like the Raptors last night, it's like, oh, they didn't look that out of place next to Toronto, partially because of what somebody like Torrey Craig brings to the table. Like he's a long, athletic wing who can guard multiple positions, and he had an epic chase down block. Like it just didn't look like size was as much of a problem as it has felt like it's been the past couple of seasons. So there's a lot of what he does. He's like Javonte Green and Derrick Jones Jr. mixed together, but taller. And so that's why the Bulls moved on from both those players in favor of somebody like Torrey Craig. And he's also a better 3-point shooter. So there's just a lot of that grit and grind, hustle, like DAWG dog type player in him but that also is combined with a veteran savvy that we've seen understand how to like win games.
Yeah, I feel like he's going to be a guy that Bulls fans fall in love with very, very quickly because he's, like you said, he has that grit and grind. He can shoot threes. He plays tough defense. Like, not only does he get asked to do a lot of stuff, but he's capable of doing just about whatever Billy Donovan's going to ask him to do, whatever role they're going to ask him to play. And I think that's a valuable asset to have on any team. And then you add in the experience of all the playoff games, the years he's been in the league, the successful teams he's been on too. Like he's been a part of these winning cultures, knows what it's like to win. I think he's going to be a perfect fit. And unfortunately, I don't want to say unfortunately, but it does seem like he might have to enter that starting lineup sooner rather than later. But I have confidence in whether it's first unit, second unit, whatever role he's being asked to play, he's going to be a valuable asset for the team. And he's been. I know it's just the preseason, but like he's been a lot of fun to watch, and it's absolutely been a steal. The fact that he's only on a veteran minimum, he's able to do just about whatever you ask him to do. He brings that 3-point shooting off the bench or in the starting lineup, whatever it is that like this team has kind of been missing. And the fact that you pretty much have him in one player as opposed to spread out between two with Javonte Green, Derrick Jones Jr., like that's another plus.
Right. Yeah, because I think you have like the length that a guy like Derrick Jones Jr. offered you, and then you have the you kind of have just like that throw yourself on the ground for a loose ball, like, and also just physicality, because I think Javonte, especially for his size, a lot of people forget that Javonte Green was like 6'5", and he was guarding power forwards. Like Javonte would be physical and would kind of get in your face, and that's a lot of what Torrey Craig also provides for you. I compared him in a lot of ways. Like I said, like you said, I think that you're right that he's going to be a big, fan
He's
favorite.
going to be a
And
bench mob like fan favorite. I mean,
right.
Chicago's going to love him.
And I think that what I compared him to over at Bleacher Nation was like on, Christmas when you get a pair of socks or a pack of socks, right? Like you had all these higher
No, let's not do him
expectations
dirty like
in
that.
free agency. No, it's a good thing because in free agency, you sit there, you dream about all these additions they might get, and on Christmas you're sitting there dreaming about maybe these gifts that you're going to get, and then you open up your first one and it's like it's a pack of socks, and you're like, oh, okay. But guess what? At the end of the day, like you're gonna wear those socks a lot. They're gonna
5 years later, you're still wearing the same pairs.
come May, come April, like what gift are you still using? You're still using those socks. And I think that while you might not think about them all the time, they might not feel like the most important addition to your wardrobe. And another thing that to kind of continue the metaphor, like that's not the thing people are going to look at, right? Like they're looking at your shirt, they're looking at your pants, they're looking at your shoes, like, and it's not the thing that's always going to stand out, and that's okay because that's not the role that it needs to play. But what socks do, they provide you a level of comfort, a level of support, a level of security, and I think that those are the ways that he's going to fill in for this team. Is he's really going to be that kind of behind the scenes guy, and Bulls fans will get it. Other people, around the league that aren't watching every night won't see the impact. But I think Bulls fans are going to see the impact that he has, particularly when we consider the new way that this group wants to play on both ends of the floor.
I'm with you. I think I didn't love the socks comparison early because that was always the worst gift. But you explained yourself. You talked.
But what are you wearing later? The socks. Yeah. What are you?
Socks. I'm gonna put on a pair of socks later. Like it's gonna happen.
It's going to happen. You're going to need the socks, and it turns out to be actually one of the more useful practical gifts. Okay, last thing I want to wrap up here.
Buy more socks.
We always need more socks. We always need more Torrey Craigs. The last thing here before we sign off, again, this is we'll talk plenty of more preseason next week and give a look further into the season and their matchup with the Oklahoma City Thunder on opening night. The last thing here, Derek Favors. This was interesting. We'll keep this brief, but they ended up signing Derek Favors to a G League or to a training camp contract. And then they proceeded to waive him, the Chicago Bulls, which means that he's lined up to be headed to the G League most likely. Head coach Billy Donovan also shared with NBC Sports Casey Johnson that is the plan for Derek Favors to be a part of the Windy City Bulls. This came as a big surprise to, I know, a lot of fans out there and just a lot of people around the league in general, because, Favors is a decade-plus player in the NBA, somebody who has played very well in the past. He's a former number 3 overall pick. He has 42 career playoff games under his belt, long, successful career with Utah before bouncing around the league over the past few years. And he's kind of fallen out of favor because I think he was drafted right when the league started to change. He was he wasn't the guy that spaced the floor. He was kind of too small to be a true center. But then as the league went to small ball, he went from power forward to being more of a center. And so it's like Andre Drummond in a lot of ways, who not in terms of the size comparison, but Drummond was, a 2-time All-Star with Detroit. He was grabbing boards. They were playing through him in the paint, but the league changes. And it kind of changed away from what Favors was good at and what he brought to the table. And he's had to adjust, and he's had a hard time doing so. With that said, I think this is a good, no risk, high potential reward situation for Chicago. You get a veteran in the room, somebody in the building who has had success in the past, good rebounder, big time athlete, only 32 years old. And they got 2 non-guaranteed contracts on their roster this season, and Terry Taylor and Carly Jones. So if a situation comes where Drummond or Vucevic gets hurt, or just in general, they don't have a lot of traditional size on this roster behind those two, and they want to go with Derek Favors, they have the option to watch him closely in the G League and see if he's worth it. Yeah,
it can't hurt. And it's nice to have a veteran who's been around the block, who's been with some pretty good teams, who just knows what it's like to win and be successful in the NBA. It's really a no risk. I'm not going to say high reward, but no risk, minimal.
Yeah, it won't be a high reward, but like
somewhat reward signing. So like, good. That's fine. If we see him, we might not see him. If we do see him, like it's not a bad guy to have in your organization.
Yeah, he played 39 games for the Thunder 2 years ago. 18 of those were starts. He was still
shocked he's only 32, by the way. I would have guessed like
game.
37. It just seemed like he's been in the NBA for 50 years.
So, it's kind of like I guess I would compare it to, a buyout guy like midway through the season. You just like don't know.
Yeah,
You're like, yeah, I'll grab that buyout guy and we'll put him on our bench. And if he helps, he helps. And if he doesn't, he doesn't. But they just kind of have him already in the G League, and they can kind of help work with him. The only thing they have to watch is you can kind of sign guys off any G League team. So, they'll have to keep an eye on if he is performing well to
get him up.
potentially get him on the roster sooner than later. But yeah, interesting call overall. I was here for it, and I think it should be a fun little wrinkle to watch over the next couple of weeks. Other than that, that's it. I think we just kind of spewed some Bulls thoughts because it was the preseason. We just had to get some stuff out there. Like we said, there's been some good, there's some bad. We'll have a little more structure in what we'll get into next week, especially with the season starting, having games on the calendar that actually are worth something and count, having players actually play real minutes. But there's been some interesting storylines here from the preseason, and I think primary two, Kobe White, great stuff so far. Patrick Williams, we'll see. That's
Yeah, we'll
one
see.
of the if one of them breaks out though, that's still going to be a major help.
And hey, if there's any questions you guys want, get at us on Twitter. Both of us have our Twitter here at Schuster Elias, at Rooney23, or at BN Bulls. Like, if you want to hear
Yep.
anything about the Bulls, you have any questions, comments, concerns, whatever, get at us. We'd love to get some of you guys involved here too with some
we can maybe
Bulls
do a
questions, topics.
we can maybe do a mailbag here soon. But yeah,
Love a good
over
mailbag.
follow at BN Bulls. You can contact us over there or our personals, and we will be back next week to talk more about opening night. I look forward to it.